So, today we are going to be talking about kind of what to expect when you go in for alterations. I know they can kind of be a little bit nerve wracking the first time you decide to go in and actually get alterations done. And so, I just kind of want to lay down a few expectations of just kind of what to expect for like on your end. So when you call to schedule alterations, you will want to call to schedule about 6 to 8 weeks out from your wedding. Maybe even a little bit farther out if you're feeling particularly concerned, like maybe the dress might not get done. But you are definitely going to want to leave that 6 to 8 week buffer, at least when you're getting normal alterations done. Now, if you want to get something that is super customized done, I recommend that you start maybe even a little bit farther out. Because if you want to add like sleeves to a bodice, or you, like, for example, we had a bride last summer who she wanted us to build up a back. Like, so the dress originally had a cutout back and it was strapless. And she wanted us to add sleeves and a back because she was getting married in a church. And it was, I guess, part of maybe like the requirements or something for the church that she was getting married in. And so we ended up building up a back and a front and sleeves. Now, that did take quite a few months because we had to order the same lace that the dress was made from the designer. And so that took just as long to come in as the dress would have. So it's pretty important that if you want something like that done, you should probably order the extra fabric when you actually order the dress. And again, alterations like those tend to take a little bit extra time just because they are so particular and they take more than one fitting or two fittings to actually get done. So just kind of keep in mind what exactly you want done for alterations and keep your expectations at like minimum 6 to 8 weeks out. Another thing to keep in mind is please make an appointment. Don't just show up for an alterations situation. We do go by appointment, and so sorry for all the shaking. We do go by appointment, and so when people just randomly show up for an alterations appointment, it can be pretty inconvenient for everybody involved, including the people that actually have made the appointments. I worked for David's Bridal for quite some time, and unfortunately, that was a big problem that we had. We would just have brides come in for fittings, and we would have to turn them away and be like, okay, but I'm so sorry, but like we're really booked right now. And we go by appointment, so if you would like to call and make an appointment and come back, and sometimes it would be fine and sometimes it would be a pretty big deal. So just keep in mind, please make an appointment before you decide to come in. It really helps us out and it helps keep your stress level down because then you actually have an appointment and we don't have to rush through your fitting because we have a slotted time scheduled out for you. It's kind of like going to the doctor. You don't usually just show up for the doctor's office. Again, if you did, you'd probably have to wait, or it might be inconvenience for everybody involved. The next thing is that if you have any questions during your alterations appointment, please, please, please do not hesitate to ask. I had a bride about 2 years ago who I actually was not the person who initially did her fitting. My manager was, but she ended up not being very happy with the fitting results. So she did her first fitting. My manager went and did her second fitting, thought everything was good. We thought the dress was good to go. We put it like on the rack to finish because all we had to do was finish up the hem. And the girl's mother called back and was very upset because the girl was not happy with how the alterations turned out. I guess they weren't meeting her expectations. And so we ended up having to go back and redo it. And unfortunately, my manager at the time was actually out on maternity leave at this point. And so it fell to me to actually do the alterations, which I didn't mind doing. But it was a situation, though, when I went in for that appointment, I was like, please tell me if something is not looking right to you or you don't like how something is fitting. I'm like, because I can't read your mind. And unfortunately, that's not the only case that's happened. I've had it happen more times than I care to admit that a bride is just not very happy with how an alterations appointment turned out. So please speak up. If there is something that doesn't look right or you don't like the way that something looks, definitely tell them. And sometimes it's hard for people who are not alteration specialists to understand that the final look of the dress is going to be very different than how it looks pinned. And so sometimes the pinning just looks a little bit funny, and I do completely understand that. Um, but if you go in for your second fitting appointment after everything's been sewn and you still just don't feel like everything is meeting your expectations, don't hesitate to say something. You'll save yourself a whole lot of time and heartache in the long run just being honest with us. Um, Another thing to keep in mind, please don't bring like 10 people to an alterations fitting. I know it can be a super exciting time, but alterations rooms are pretty small. They're meant for a bride and an alteration specialist and maybe like one or two other people. And to kind of go along with that, don't bring your kids if you can help it. Alterations appointments tend to take a little bit of time. They are usually scheduled for an hour-long appointment, and sometimes they run over that depending on how much your like how big your dress is. Like a huge princess ball gown dress might take us 2 hours to pin. It just depends. If we have another stylist available, sometimes it takes us less time, but either way, it takes a little bit of time. People tend to get bored and they tend to start milling about and they tend to get really nitpicky. And, it's just one of those situations where, like, if you want to bring your mom and, like, your bridesmaid, or maybe, like, your future mother in law and a bridesmaid, or your mom and your dad, or your sister, or something like that, that's fine. But, like, don't bring, like, 10 people to a fitting appointment. Those fitting rooms are definitely not designed to have, like, 10 people inside of them. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. And then the second to last thing would be, please make sure that you eat something before you come in. I know that brides are all like, oh, I want to be skinny for my dress, I'm going to totally lose weight. 9 times out of 10, brides don't lose weight, so it's really quite a moot point. But please eat before you come. You're standing in heels typically for more than an hour getting pinned, and your health is super important to us. And I have actually had brides pass out while pinning them. And a manager that I worked for when I worked for David's, she actually had a couple of brides throw up. Like they actually got physically ill because they were standing too long and they got overheated and dehydrated and they didn't eat enough, and so they passed out. So please make sure that you eat a fairly decent sized meal before you come, and make sure that you drink quite a bit as well. And then the last thing that I do want to mention is, please bring like your shoes and your undergarments that you're planning on wearing the day of the wedding. Sometimes brides change up their shoes, and that can get really obnoxious for us. Please see my shoes video about that. But your undergarments can also make a pretty big difference. I have had it where brides change their undergarments. Like maybe they decide that they don't want a corset their first a fitting appointment, and so we fit the dress to fit without a corset, but then they decide they want a corset, and all of a sudden now I have to refit the dress because of the corset. And so please just decide what you want before you come in, because your dress will look nicer, and you won't end up spending as much money, because like I have said before, the more alterations you do, like we charge you for that. So if I am letting the dress out and then taking it in and then letting it out and taking it in, I'm charging you every time I have to do that, because that takes up my time, and I need to get paid for that. So just try to be prepared when you come in initially. And we do try to remind you when we actually schedule the fitting appointments, like please make sure you have your undergarments and the shoes you're planning on wearing, and you'll save yourself a lot of time and money and hassle with that. So, and then I just want to say, keep an open mind when you go in for alterations. I know that it can be super stressful, and you might not necessarily exactly understand what is going on, with alterations, and I know that it can just be a source of stress for the bride, but try to keep an open mind. We are specialists, so we know what we're doing. We've been doing this for a long time, and we were specifically trained to do it. So other than that, I guess if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. If you have any suggestions for videos, also please leave them down below. I love seeing what you guys have to say. And I guess just happy fittings, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.